The night my wife was buried, my newborn wouldn't stop crying. And that's when an Apache woman knocked on my door and said, "I have milk." I still don't know if letting her in saved my child or damned me in the eyes of everyone I knew. And I want you to tell me honestly, was I wrong for what I did? Because out on the plains, a widowed cowboy doesn't get many chances to choose between pride and survival. And I chose survival, even when it made me a villain. I should start at the beginning. Before the dirt was packed over my wife's grave and before the baby learned how to scream like the world owed him something. My wife Clara died bringing our son into this world during a late spring storm that rattled the windows of our small ranch house. The doctor shook his head, said there was nothing more to be done, and by morning I was alone with a red-faced baby and a silence so loud it felt like it was crushing my chest. I was a ranch hand turned homesteader, decent with cattle, useless with babies. Clara had planned to nurse him, had laughed when I worried about how we'd manage. Now she was gone, and the milk bottles I tried to use barely kept the child quiet. He cried day and night, a thin, desperate sound that scraped my nerves raw. Folks in town offered sympathy, but no one offered a solution. A widowed man with a crying baby was a curiosity, not a responsibility. By the third night, I was sitting on the floor with my back against the bed, rocking my son and whispering promises I couldn't keep. That's when I heard the knock. Soft, steady, not the kind of knock a drunk or a deputy makes. I opened the door with the baby screaming in my arms, and there she stood, wrapped in a dark shawl. Eyes calm, posture proud. She said it plain as day, in careful English. "I have milk." My first thought was fear. The second was shame for feeling it. Around here, people whispered about the Apache camp upriver like it was a curse. I looked at my son's red face and then back at her, and I realized I didn't have the luxury of my neighbor's hatred. I stepped aside and let her in. Her name was Nalin, and she explained that she'd lost a child months before. She sat in my wife's chair, took my son with hands that didn't shake, and just like that, the crying stopped. I stood there stunned, listening to the quiet and feeling something like relief for the first time since. Clara died. Nalin came back the next day, and the day after that. She never asked for money. I offered, and she shook her head. She said milk was meant to be shared, not sold. Word got around fast, though. A neighbor saw her leaving my house, and by sundown, I had men at my fence telling me I was inviting trouble, that I was disgracing Clara's memory. I told them to leave. I didn't care about their talk when my baby finally slept. Weeks passed and my son grew stronger. So did the stairs in town. The preacher stopped visiting. The man I'd worked alongside for years wouldn't meet my eye. Then one afternoon, a deputy showed up and warned me that helping them wasn't going to end well. I asked him if he'd rather bury my son next to his mother. He didn't answer. Nalin noticed the tension, of course. She told me she could stop coming if it caused trouble. That's when I realized how deep I was in this choice. So that was the situation I was in. And I had to make a decision that would define me out here. Before I tell you what happened next, pause for a second and tell me what you would have done in my boots. Would you protect your child at any cost, or bow to the fear of your community? The breaking point came when a group of men rode up while Nalin was inside. They shouted, accused me of siding with the enemy, demanded I send her away. My hands were shaking, but I stepped onto the porch and told them she was under my roof and my protection. One of them reached for his rifle. Nalin walked out beside me, calm as ever, and met their eyes without flinching. She spoke in her own language first, then said in English that she would leave, but the baby would starve. Something in her voice cut through the anger. Maybe it was the truth of it. Maybe it was seeing a woman willing to face armed men to feed a child not her own. The men hesitated. Then one by one they turned their horses away. The deputy spat in the dirt and followed them. After that the visits became quieter. Nalin kept coming until my son was strong enough for other food. When she finally stopped, she pressed his tiny hand and smiled at me, like we shared a secret the world didn't deserve. Life didn't magically get easier. Some folks never forgave me. Others softened when they saw my boy running around the yard, alive and laughing. I learned that the lines people draw are often thinner than they pretend, and that love can come from the last place you expect.